What we are going to do now is to protect the actions over the user resource. For the users, of course. That means that only the user that owns the access token can modify its own information, remove its own account, and finally obtain its own information. Additionally, as you may remember from the previous section, we are not allowing to the client, to the traditional clients, not users, the clients, to remove the user account. So using the policy, we are going to create an additional condition to remove a user. So let's proceed first, creating the policy. Of course, we are going to use the make policy, and we are going to call this user policy using the user model. Just press enter to create it. And now if we go to our code, directly to policies, we can see there the user policy. We have a little problems there. First, we have 2 times the user definition. This is because Laravel is automatically trying to import it. But of course, we are acting directly over the user model, so we don't need to use 2 times the same definition, of course. And additionally, we have exactly the same parameter in our methods definition, so we need to change this. And we are going to call this authenticated user. And the other is the regular user. This is the user that currently is sending the access token, and this is the user that we are going to validate the access. So, what is going to be the condition? Well, we just need to return if the authenticated user ID is the same of the user that we are receiving on the URL. Now, we are not going to use the create method because we are not going to restrict the creation of users. Remember that whatever valid client that we have in our RESTful API is going to be able to create new users. That means that we are going to restrict only view, update, and delete. Now, let's register our policy. We have now the user policy for the user model. Remember to import the model and the policy definitions. And finally, we just need to go to protect our controller's actions using this policy through the middleware. So for this, we need to go to user controller directly, and we are going to use the can middleware. The first one is going to protect the view possibility, sending the user, and that is going to be applied to the show method. Then we have the update for the update method. And finally, we have delete for the destroy method. Now, remember that I said at the beginning of the class that we need to protect a little different the delete action. So let's go back to our user policy, and on the delete method, we need to be sure that the access token, or basically the authenticated user that we have, is only the real user, is not a client or any other thing different. So we have several ways to do this. For example, we could just go and say that only the user can be deleted using a button or something like that from the web version of our RESTful API or for web project. And that is going to be completely good because we are going to be completely sure that the user is authenticated and validated. But let's just say that we want to keep that possibility directly using the API calls. So how can we be sure that the token that we received belongs only for the user and is not any other different client using its own credentials? Well, remember that the personal access tokens are tokens that only the user can obtain and can be obtained only through the web application. So the only thing that we have to do is to validate if this access token is a personal access token. And how can we do that? Well, we just need to obtain, of course, the authenticated user. Then from this authenticated user, we need the token. This is the token that the user is using on the request. And this token is associated with a client. So let's obtain the client. Now, in the client definition, client is a model from Laravel Passport we have the possibility to know if this client is a personal access client or not. And that can be possible through an attribute called personal access client. If the personal access client property is true, that means that this client is a personal access client, which means that this token is a personal access token. And we can proceed because we are completely sure that that token was obtained using the web interface. After this, we just need to check. Let's to obtain an access token for a valid user. I'm still using the previous user from the previous classes. So we are going to obtain a password grant type token. Let's to copy the access token. And let's to try to delete this user. This user with these credentials is the user with ID 629. So if we send a delete request to the user's access point passing the 629 ID, and of course we are going to send the authorization header, we can see how this action is unauthorized because we are using a password grant type to obtain the token, and we need to use instead of that a personal access token. So I'm going to use a personal access token that I already have prepared and replace it. So let's to paste it here. And I'm going to try to remove, for example, the user with ID 1. That is not possible, again, because it is not the same user that owns the current access token. But if we use the previous ID that we know that is the user that owns this access token, that could be completely possible because, well, we are using a personal access token. And here it is. We currently removed this user because we are using a personal access token and it is the same user. Of course, if we try to do that again, it is not going to be possible because this user does not exist and is completely unauthenticated right now. You can, of course, try to check the other methods and it's going to work exactly the same. We are done now and we can continue in the next class. See you there.